I see. This is part of the shift of perception you're talking about.
Yes.
So it's possible to talk about sustainability in a way in which we're still kind of alienated from nature. We see it as separate. It's simply almost like an appliance, and we got to make sure that it's got enough fuel to continue operating, something like that. And you're finding that view still objectionable. It's not all the way to where you're trying to bring us.
And for example, when, as we were talking earlier, we were talking about how when people distinguish the environment as a resource, so let's take minerals for example, then what I'm attempting to say here is that those minerals need to become recycled so that the minerals aren't being constantly taken from the planet, and that they need to be recycled so that through the recycling process the new products can be made. So if I'm talking about aluminium, I'm talking about steel, I'm talking about because as we all know that we cannot, within the present paradigm of business, it cannot continue indefinitely because the planet simply can't sustain that.
You can't sustain,
and it's not only that, but in Western cultures, in developing countries adopting a Western lifestyle, it's simply not possible that all countries around the world can live a Western lifestyle.
Right.
So it has to go that way. It has to go down that path. If we want to live sustainably, it has to go that way.
So I think I hear something in what you're saying about, and let me see if I can keep this idea in my head, but there's a sense in which it sounds like, I'm trying to think of the consequences for business going forward with your view, and I hear you talking about a model that sustains nature, and you're using the word sustains as maybe perceives how nature operates and works with that.
Exactly.
Am I making any sense?
Yes, no, exactly. So it's understanding how we are interconnected and we are interdependent with the web of life. So it's understanding cycles. It's understanding the cyclical flow of matter. It's understanding what impacts and consequences we're having on the web of life. But there's another important point that I wanted to make, which was that I wanted to draw people's attention to the economic aspect of this.
What I was going to ask is, can business survive in the kind of paradigm you're talking about?
Absolutely, absolutely, because ultimately, the economy has to do with us. It has to do, we construct an economy. So it's a human construction. So the point that I wanted to make is that that economic growth and development can still happen within a circular paradigm because it requires a perceptual shift. And if business is producing products made from natural substances and packaging made from natural substances, then that packaging and those products are enriching and sustaining life. And consumers at the moment are looking for products of this kind, but as business, it's not stepping up to the plate.
Opportunity here.
Oh, it's absolutely.
Well, that's great. And let's. I know that we are maybe halfway through our time, and there's some other questions that I'd like to get to. Some things that really struck me as unusual in your book. So maybe if I can shift a little bit our topic. Before I do that, I wanted to let our viewers know that more information about Jane Cull and about her book are available on her website at lifesnaturalsolutions.com.au. Is that right?
That's right.
That URL or website address should be appearing on the screen if it hasn't already momentarily. So what I was saying is, one thing I found really distinctive and interesting in your work, which to me was quite exciting, was something new that you bring to the discussions of sustainability that I've seen, is this emphasis you put on human emotion. So my question is, how is it that you see human emotion somehow as critical to this shift in worldview you're talking about?
Well, emotions are absolutely essential because it's emotions that determine our perceptions. It's emotions that determine our behaviour. So emotions are fundamental in understanding how we perceive the environment, how we will relate with the environment, how we perceive ourselves.
How do emotions affect our perception?
Well, what I'd like to do is to provide an example to answer that question. So my example would be, if we come back to daily life, and if we look at fear, for example. So when we're in an emotion of fear, we will see the environment. We will perceive a separation, and we may even possibly perceive the environment as a threat. So that's just one example. If it's a human being and we're in the emotion of fear, then that person will become an object, and they will be perceived as a threat. So that's another example.
So maybe here we are, a culture of all these people so afraid that they're not going to make enough money to survive or something, that they can't have that relationship to. It's difficult for them to have that relationship to the environment that you're talking about.
I wouldn't quite put it in that way. The point that I wanted to make is that so we've looked at fear as one example. If we look at trust, on the other hand, as a different example, then, and all of us have had, walks in nature or walks along the beach, and we're feeling very calm and we're feeling relaxed and we're feeling peaceful. And usually when we're in those kinds of emotions, we perceive the environment in a very different way. And we're seeing it in beauty, in wonder. We have respect for it.
Yes.
So this is the perceptual shift that I'm talking about.
Well, this is what's reminding me about your earlier discussion about some people perceiving sustainability as merely management of resources again. And there we are without that emotional connection to nature.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're talking about how this emotional shift is part of the perceptual shift that's necessary. And I find something there seems really important to me.
Well, understanding, as I said before, understanding the emotions provides deep insight into how we do what we do.
Well, and you even said in your book, I think you state that you believe the Western worldview is actually founded on suppression.
Yes.
Isn't that right?
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? That's
so how I would answer that is that suppression of our emotions is essentially a suppression of our biology. So, we shut down the emotions, or we'll have alcohol to suppress our emotions. We'll have sugar. I mean, there's all, drugs. Food is also another example to shut down our emotions. So, and what I've observed from my own daily experience was that when I suppress, I go through a very profound perceptual shift.
Yes.
And so what I began to do was to take that out into a cultural perspective.
Right.
And then I began to see that, like in business, for example, how the human relations of business will be hierarchical. You will have male and female dynamics in hierarchical relations. You will have, so all of these arise from suppression. And of course, when you have suppression in relation to the environment, I distinguish in the book that I call that the denial of nature. Because what happens when we suppress is that we not only create a separation, but we also want to control. So when you want to control, then that's going to lead to destruction. It's going to lead to depletion.
So some of the things you're saying is that if culturally we are suppressing our emotions, maybe because of the way our economy is organized, maybe because a lot of us are in jobs that are very hierarchical, or maybe our families are patriarchal, and certain relations of domination are very prevalent in our culture some way, that can actually affect our relationship to the environment, to nature.
Absolutely.
And that can be an underlying cause of the environmental degradation that we're seeing.
Exactly.